together like from 90. Okay, so well, this is a little embarrassing, but we both were in Eretz Yisrael we just found out now in 1975 Tafshin Lamed Zion, right? We were both there. And I told her that at that point, I remember I went to the diaspora yeshiva. I was thinking, well, maybe I'll go to yeshiva. So I went to diaspora yeshiva and I sat outside, and I didn't know, like, what do? You walk in. I didn't know what to do. So all of a sudden, some guy walked out and he sat down, and I said, oh, do you go to this yeshiva? And he said, oh yeah, I do. And he said, wow, man. Remember, it's 1975. He said, man, Hashem is so heavy. He's so heavy, man. Hashem is so heavy. Now, as far as I knew, heavy meant good. Now, it's interesting because until now, 50 years later, I never understood what he meant. So he said, wow, man, Hashem is so heavy. Hashem is so heavy, so heavy. And then he says, like, thinking, oh, that sounds good. All right, Hashem is heavy. He's really good. And then he says, I got to get myself to Dahab. Dahab was like a beach area in the Sinai. The one we had Sinai in those days. I got to get myself to Dahab to get my head together. And for 50 years, I'm wondering, if Hashem is so heavy, meaning good, why are you leaving? I'm going away somewhere else. Like, what's your issue? And based on that, I said, this is not, I'm not going to this place. And everyone walked in the door. I turned around and I went back to the kibbutz. And that was it. Like, didn't sound like a place for me. So Sivia just explained to me that heavy meant, like, the guy didn't have, I didn't understand for 50 years. The guy didn't have the kalim for the intensity of Hashem's light. So he wanted to go and get his head together by sitting at the beach in Dahab, right? He didn't have the kalim for it. It was very interesting. So now it reframes my whole idea after 50 years of what that was really all about. It's mamish like 50 years, and she and I were chabrusas, and like today's her anniversary, she said, of like when she became frum, or something like that. And so, like, maybe it was the same day. We didn't know each other. Maybe it was the same day that I was at diaspora yeshiva sitting outside wondering if I should join the yeshiva and et cetera. And, so that's the story.
That's so cute. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let me tie that in with how I see that connected to Shara Yichud. Maybe this is what you're saying, but
yeah.
You mentioned that you just went over paragraph 3 of chapter 3, which is a beautiful paragraph where he talks about the Shema prayer and how it corresponds to everything we learned in chapter 1. So when you say that this guy who said, oh, it's Hashem is so heavy, didn't have the kalim, that's really what you're doing with his bononos and iyun, that we're creating kalim for the light. And the keli, the first keli, is our brain. We're really kind of stretching and breaking our brain to become a different kind of vessel for Hashem's light. And this is the process that we're in. Does that resonate for you, Sarah Torah?
Yes. And now I remember why we brought up this story. Now I remember, because, right, we were learning the Shema Yisrael, et cetera, and the, when you come to this understanding of like, oh my goodness, Hashem Echad, right, the oneness of Hashem down here, and et cetera. So what does it bring you to? It brings you to feeling, wow. It brings you to chagas, to these feelings. And then what does that bring you to? Netzach Yisod, this determination to do something based on it. So now it's supposed to take you to Vishinantam Levanech V'di, go out and do Mitzrayim. You're supposed to learn about, learn about Hashem is here, down here and up there. There isn't anything else. And then it brings you to this. And then you're supposed to teach it to your children, to your students. Go out and do Mitzrayim. So this guy's Maisa, Netzach Yisod, was got to go to Dahab. That's how we got to it. Now I remember, like, what was his Netzach Yisod based on that? 3 stages. You learn it. You have a wow in your heart, chagas. You have chabad, chagas, and nihi. His nihi was, I got to go to Dahab.
Okay.
Anyway, yes. Okay, sorry.
So hopefully we're not going to Dahab. We're going to somewhere higher. So I just wanted to share that really what I'm seeing with chapter 3 is that the style is, Reb Hillel's style is quite different from chapter 1 and 2. So previously, when we looked at each paragraph, I would do a summary, and it was kind of like a whole idea all in one paragraph. And he was building concepts. And that's what really he was doing. He was building this foundation of concepts for us. But now in chapter 3, each paragraph is more like, it's more like he's speaking a long sentence. And actually, in these 5 paragraphs, he hasn't yet finished the sentence. He's building in these concepts slightly in a different way. So I thought that really what we need to do, or what I felt I need to do in order to keep the thread of the ideas as he's showing them to us, rather than doing like detailed summaries like I was doing before, what I thought is useful and important is to do like a 3-line summary of 3 to 4-line summary of each paragraph, so that we kind of keep the thread of what is going on. Mila, I just suddenly realized you probably want to give a different kind of introduction before we go into these details. So
we're doing chapter what?
We're doing chapter
paragraph 4. What are we doing?
So what we're going to do is I'm going to read.
No, in this
class. So what I thought we would be doing is that I'm going to show you my 1-line summary, my 3 short summaries up until paragraph 3. Then we'll go into breakout rooms, and together you'll read through paragraph 4 and come up with a short summary of paragraph 4, which is what we studied last week. So you're doing the review and you're coming up with like an understanding of what that paragraph is about. And then in the rest of the class, we're going to go into paragraph 5, and Mila's going to lead us through paragraph 5.
Yeah, but before we're going to go into the breakout rooms, I really would like to remind everybody about why we are here. Okay, I know Baruch Hashem, many of you already got the taste of Chassidus. So many of you probably here for pleasure or for something beyond that, right? But then there is a very general kavanah that we are all here for. And our last week's Parshas Lech Lecha, that we read yesterday, really reminds us of that very much, right? This is where Hashem promises Avraham Avinu the land of 10 nations. And he gives the overview of what are true boundaries of Eretz Israel is. And this is all the way from Nahar Pras until Yam HaGadol, and Euphrates River, all the way till the sea. So yes, from the river to the sea, it's definitely our lands. This is literally what discusses. And moreover, people might mistake when they read the Parsha and think like, oh, I'm going to give it to your descendants. Well, through Ishmael came all the Arab descendants, and person might think like, yeah, this is the land belongs to them. But then Hashem clarifies, before the circumcision, the Apsukim that discuss, says, I'm going to give you the child through Sarah. And Abraham says, before that is, I'm going to give you a child through who is going to inherit all of your possessions. And Abraham Avinu says over there, well, I have Ishmael already. And Hashem says, no, this is not the one. Okay, I'm going to give you a son through Sarah. And it's interesting, before the circumcision, he already gives him it's not even a prophecy, it's a fact, right? He gives him like, okay, you're going to have a son and it's going to be Yitzchak. You need to name him Yitzchak. Okay, and it's really, really beautiful. So the Yitzchak is the one who is going to inherit the land of 10 nations. And this is pretty much the only place in Torah that discusses the land of Israel as the land of 10 nations. And this is where the Lech Lecha, this whole journey, okay, of letting go, everything what we know up until now, and really stepping into the land that I will show you, right? He doesn't even specify which land. And then later on, he says, okay, this is going to be the land of 10 nations, when he actually, makes a covenant with, after he already stepped in, right? While he's already in Eretz Israel, he establishes a covenant with Avraham Avinu that this is going to be the land of 10 nations. So the power is pretty much given to us already from last week's, parsha. And also to mention that this is 75th year of the Rebbe's leadership. And Avraham Avinu was 75 years old when Hashem actually started giving him commands of what to do. So the whole avodah of Avraham Avinu really starts with Parshas Lech Lecha, not before. All 75 years were kind of like, Avram figuring out what is he going to do and all that stuff, okay, about Hashem Echad, the unity of God, and all that. But the real thing with the relationship where Hashem literally opens himself up to Avraham Avinu starts with Lech Lecha, starts when he's 75 years old. So if we think that we've done enough and now we're kind of floating, this is truly not. This is when the real avodah starts, in this 75th year of the Rebbe's leadership, because that's where the Lech Lecha is taking place. So it's like, mega charged time where we start doing the Lech Lecha and really stepping into Eretz Israel, because this is what Lech Lecha is about, is stepping into Eretz Israel, conquering the land. And how we conquering the land? We are conquering with our innermost weapons that we have, and this is our moichin, as the Rebbe stated in Lech Lecha, right? In Tavshanun Beis Sicha, from Chesmar Cheshvan, and also in Dvar Malchus, that this is the time where the most auspicious time where we could actually conquer the land in a peaceful manner. And I think this is the key word here, right? We don't want to have any milchama, we don't want to have any wars or any tribulations, so quote. We want nice, smooth surrender of our enemies to us, like it was done in the times of Shlomo Melech, right? Shlomo was the one who really brought peace into the land, to the point where he was able to conquer all of his enemies through his chachma. And this is what we want. We want that peaceful transition and peaceful transfer of all the possessions of the borders of Eretz Israel. And this is the kavanah, that B'ezrat Hashem, we're going to be reinstating so now with this, let's go to our breakout rooms.
There's something that I want to do before the breakout room, Mila. I just want to do the summary up until now so that we're in the conversation. But I just want to say something that I just had an aha, maybe from what you were saying, that the process of avodas hamochin, of hitbonenut, is really a kind of lech lecha, because you start, but you really don't know where you're going to go. That the process of going from the Binah of Binah to the rochav of Binah to the omek of Binah, you have no clue really where it's taking you. You're just going to the land that I will show you.
Isn't that the essence of bittul?
Yeah, because you need to have bittul, because you see what he says, lech lecha mi'artzecha. You need to let go of the paradigms that were created in your land. And we all know that we're all different from different countries. They say, oh, he's Australian, oh, he's English, oh, he's this, oh, he's that. The land affects our thinking. We're programmed by the land and the culture we're in. Then there is mimoladetecha, right? That's already closing the circle from your birthplace, right? And then these are the programs and the paradigms of that birthplace, right? Which city you're from, right? Or you're American, but where exactly? You're from East, from West, from Central America, etc., etc. And then there's a base avicha. That's the hardest one. And that's why, there are many midrashim, why when a person physically goes out, he goes out first from his house, then from his birthplace, then from his country. But we see here the order of pasuk is exactly the opposite. It's because it's easier to let go of our our country than our birthplace, and then the household programs, it's much harder to let go. So that's the order that Hashem is, approaching Avraham Avinu. okay? Because it's an inner work that Avraham Avinu needed to do. And then he doesn't tell where he's going to take him. He could have said, I'm going to take you to Eretz Canaan. What's the big deal? Avraham Avinu didn't know about Eretz Canaan. He lived in Ur Kasdim. That was not so far. The Eretz Israel, it wasn't like, America, that he didn't even see or didn't even hear about. He knew about Eretz Canaan very well. Okay, it was like not far. So why is Hashem keeping that an element of surprise for him? That's actually was one of the 10 tests, right? That Alech Lecha was one of the 10 tests of Avraham Avinu. And this is, yes, to create bittul in him. You need to let go everything of what you know to a place that I'm going to show you, right? That what the level of trust Avraham Avinu really need to have in order to follow this, right? That means like it's a total surrender. I'm going to take you somewhere and why do you think Hashem did it? Like to inflict him? No, not to inflict him. Is that to create probably curiosity, to create that desire to go somewhere. And also because while he's doing Lech Lecha, he does not have yet tools to embody this new light. So let's say if Hashem will tell you to Eretz Canaan, and this is just my interpretation already of reality, I haven't seen it written, right? While you're still in the process of letting go of your old self, Eretz Canaan sounds familiar, and this was the problem. Okay, that's why Hashem did not want him to know where he takes it. He first needs to get rid of all the programs. Okay, he says, "Du liolech lecha, and I will show you the land." It's something to be seen. It's also, it's more the level of chachma. It's not your understanding that I'm going to show you with. I'm going to really change your paradigm, and paradigms are usually changed on the level of chachma, not on the level of binah. Remember, only omek of chachma, that's when we let go of how we understand things and see the truth of the matter. Okay? And that just, fits very well into this, Yeah, it's an element where we need to, be totally bottled to a place. And now let's ask this question. Is any of you who's sitting here really understand where we're going to land with all this? In a very experiential, I don't think so. I don't think any of us here really knows what's going to happen. We have no idea. We are all in it together. It's an element of surprise to all of us, and it definitely breaks our heads and breaks our paradigms big time. And we don't even know where we're going to land. So we are in a process of Lech Lecha, definitely.
Okay, so I'm going to share with you these short summaries, and then we're going to go into breakout rooms, and you will take a look at paragraph 4 and write a summary. So in paragraph 1 of chapter 3, he introduced us. There are two worlds, the concealed world of Atzilut and the revealed worlds of Bia. His Hitbonenus begins with Yehuda Tata, which means unifying the created beings or the created world with Malchus of Atzilus. This is done through Hitbonenus on the Dvar Hashem, the words of Hashem that flow from Malchus of Atzilus to the worlds of Bia, the beings created Me'ayin Li'esh. So in paragraph 1, he introduced us to these two ideas of the concealed world of Atzilus and the revealed world of Bia. Then in paragraph 2, Reb Hillel explained what is Yehuda Tata and what is Yehuda Ilah. So Yehuda Tata, and he compared it to what we learned in chapter 1. So in chapter 1, we learned when I do Iyun into a concept, I analyzed the letters I heard from my teacher to search for their inner dimension, the omek hamosag, the omek of Binah. And the parallel to that in the Hisbonenus into Elokos is Yehuda Tata, which is when I do Iyun into created beings, I analyze their letter combinations to sense their bitul to their source in Malchus of Atzilus. So you're analyzing the letter combinations of the Dvar Hashem that gives them life. Okay, so then Yehuda Ilah is when I do iyun into a concept, which we learned in chapter 1, the iyun connects me to the omek hamosag. This connection is hamakas hadas, which enables me to sense the essence of the concept, in other words, the chokhmah. So that's what we learned in chapter 1, this process of connecting to the omek hamosag and the hamakas hadas, which takes us into the chokhmah. And we begin to sense the chokhmah that is in the Binah. And then the parallel to that in iyun into elokus is when I do iyun into elokus, I come to the level of seeing, in other words, chokhmah, how the 10 spheros of Atzilus are united with their source in the Ma'atzil, in the, how do we translate Ma'atzil? The emanator. Okay, so that was, so we learned basically about this Yichud Tata, Yichud Elah, and how it corresponds to what we already know about iyun. Then in paragraph 3, Reb Hillel describes how each detail of the Shema prayer, including Baruch Shem, and the first paragraph beginning Ve'ahavta, how they map onto the process of hisbonenus into a concept that we learned in chapter 1 and 2. You know, this I could have written more detail, as Saratova spoke about in the beginning of the class, that it goes into the chagat, the nihi, going basically from the intellectual process of understanding Shema down into the emotions, down into the action. Okay, so that's where we are. And then last week we did paragraph 4. So now what I'm asking you to do is read paragraph 4 in groups of 2 and 3 and write down a summary, because in order to write down like a 3 or 4 line summary, or even a little bit longer, you have to really get it. You have to grasp what's going on. So that's what we're going to do now. Let's see, there's something on the chat. Somebody has a question or a comment. Can you post this to the chat so I can print it? Okay. Yeah, I will do that now. Post it.
So this is,
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing. And I'll post this to the chat. And also I'll obviously put it in the Google Drive. But now, so is it clear to everybody what you're doing in your breakout groups? Wow. Oh, do you already put them in breakout groups?
Yeah.
You know? Okay, great. That's
And to know that he's the same above the world and within the world the same, and there's no change. How's that? And this is all embodied in
okay.
Shema.
Right.
This is all embodied in Shema.
Embodied in.
And then from that, when we come to really know that, the next step is it brings us to the depths of being able to see deeply, see this concept with the eyes of our seichel, literally with the eyes of our seichel, we can actually see this concept. And on that, it says, V'yadaita, Yevayu Elokim. You should know.
Okay, great. So I'm going to ask you to write that up and put it on the chat.
I sort of did, but let's see. I'll try.
Okay. Our purpose in life is to express this one mitzvah, to know Hashem, that we start with bringing the knowledge to Pnimius, which brings us to be able to see and feel this with the eyes of our seichel.
And also to know that Hashem is the same down here as he is above, in the world as he is above the world, no change.
Okay, so let me see. I wonder where people went. Like, where did Miriam where did Miriam go? And there are a bunch of people who disappeared. Let's see. Okay, good. Well,
You can correct my typos.
yeah, I'll do it another time, and I'll adapt it, but that's a good start. Okay. So those of you with Miriam, for example, do you know, was she in the rooms, or was that her? Okay. So we're going to continue now with paragraph 5. Mila, over to you. And Mila, you muted.
Yeah. You want to stop sharing so I could
I think
share my screen?
I did stop sharing.
Okay.
Oh, sorry. How come?
Yeah. Okay.
Sorry.
No problem. Okay.
Transfer.
So yeah, this time we going to be sharing slightly differently. There are two things happening simultaneously on my screen. Okay, so we're going to go through paragraph 5, and then we're just going to be, looking at this diagram that I prepared. Okay, just 1 second. Something just like this. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is something actually, very fun. Is since we are talking about something very specific, right? It's a very specific hasagah that he wants us now to contemplate and understand how omek, rochav, and omek have rochav. How orech, rochav, and omek is going to be applied to this hasagah. And which hasagah are we talking about? We're talking about Memale Kol Almin, as it was already discussed in the previous paragraph. So now the aspect of Binah, right? V'hina b'chinas habina nikra hasagah v'hasagah zois the Memale Kol Almin, right? Now the aspect of Binah, which is called hasagah, as it applies to the comprehension of Memale Kol Almin. Okay, so now everything what we know about orech, rochav, and omek, now we're going to apply it to this understanding of Memale Kol Almin. V'yesh ba orech, rochav, omek, right? It possesses the 3 dimensions: orech, which is length; rochav, which is the breadth or width, right? And omek, which is depth. Okay. Ha'orech shebayi hiskavrus ha'inyan hazeh el hasechel, right? The length of this hasagah is bringing this concept closer to the intellect, closer to our mind. Okay, before we knew nothing about it. Now we're going to be actually, knowing something about it. Okay, v'hamashalim shainim, right? And this is going to be done through b'mashalim shainim, through various familiar analogies. Hayiduim, they are familiar to us. Ad sheyeh hadavar hazeh karav b'moichay ma'od, until the idea becomes very near and tangible in one's mind. Okay, so the goal is kirva el hasechel, right? And as you could see here in this, little diagram that, was created, right? This is a general understanding of many mashalim, okay? And this is, the goal is kirva el hasechel. Just, we need to Okay. Now, Obeloshen Yiddish, Arif. Now, help me, please. Gelesen zer they seichel tzizir. Right? So in plain Yiddish, to draw the idea down very close to oneself. Okay, v'lahalbishoy b'levush hagshama, ad sheyachol tinag lahasig chulu, and to clothe it in a physical metaphor. And this is very essential, that it has to be something physical, something from around the world that is very known to us, so we can understand the principle of how things work. We cannot talk about something that we don't even know what that is, and serve it as a mashal for something that we definitely don't know what that is. Right? That's not a good mashal. A good mashal, it's something that we all know, we're very familiar with. We've seen it, we've touched it, we've smelled it. Okay? And that will serve as a mashal for us to understand something more abstract. Okay? Until the small child is able to grasp. Right? And this is accomplished by producing many analogies, mashalim, for this concept. Right? For example, now is going to give us 3 mashalim, right? For this hasagah, which is Meziv Hashemesh, from the ray of the sun, or Mi'or Haner, or from the light of a candle, or Mikoach HaPoel Benifal, or the koach of the power of the activator in the activated being. Now, don't get, for me, this is personal, it was the hardest mashal to understand, but with Rat Hashem, we're going to go deeper into every single mashal. So don't feel intimidated that you expected to know it. He's just mentioning it briefly. What are these mashalim?
So, Mila,
And
just to clarify, these are the 3 mashalim for Memale Kol Almin.
Yeah, we are talking only about Memale. We're not touching anything else. Right? And the more analogies one multiplies, right? Even though the inner meaning is one. So what's the point of bringing so many mashalim? The inner meaning is one. Why there's a need for it? And truly, he can understand the idea from a single analogy. So why he needs to bring so many mashalim? What's the reason for it? Nevertheless, through many analogies, the idea becomes more accessible and close into analysis. We are bringing these ideas to our seichel. So our seichel, instead of thinking about cholent and potatoes, is going to start thinking about Memale Kol Almin. Okay? Through the analogies of cholent and potatoes, right? So meaning what we are truly doing is that we're expanding our awareness, we're expanding a little bit our cognition. So instead of thinking something only about this world, we are adding a deeper dimension, right? We are using the Gashmis the Mashalim so we can understand a little bit about Elokus. And the key word is a little bit, in general sense, so we can get familiarity and feel comfortable with certain ideas. And therefore, we're going to be using many Mashalim because it just makes it more understandable, okay? And why we need to have also many Mashalim Kanal, as we explained above, regarding Petite D'Oraita, right? Regarding the Petite D'Oraita, which is elaboration of Torah concept through casual Torah chatter, right? It's something that we already know. More familiar, okay? And this is something that we get slowly accustomed to. And this is what is called wetting our feet, right? When we come to the river, we don't go all the way to the inner current, right? It's impossible for us. Well, maybe now with technology, somebody could just throw you in the middle of the river. But usually you come, you wet your feet first with the water. to make yourself comfortable a little bit. And then slowly, you go more and more deeper to the point that in the beginning you have a ground under your feet. And at one point you would need to let go and swim on your own. Okay, so that support is more or less provided through these many mashalim. Now, the rochav is a little bit different. Okay, so let's look at the diagram here, right? So the orech, which is length. Now, this is all we're discussing the Binah of Memale Kol Almin, right? And we're talking about orech, which is length. And this is general understanding of many mashalim. We're referring that Torah chatter. And the goal is kirve l'seichel, right? So we actually get acquainted, our brain starts working and understanding the nimshal, the mashal, the nimshal, and so on and so forth. Right? The width of understanding. Now, the rochav, let me explain you. Okay, well, that's what he says. Now, the rochav, it's impossible to understand through one mashal. Why? Why in orech we could understand through one mashal, and in rochav we cannot? Liyos ki hamashal lo yochel liyos doime b'chol pirte inyanav l'nimshav lemala, because the mashal cannot be similar in all its details to the nimshal itself. It can't, because the nimshal is very compound. The nimshal is not a simple concept. The nimshal is much bigger than this physical world. So there is no one mashal that will serve the purpose of explaining the nimshal. Okay? For example, the mashal, one of the mashalim is brought up as the ray of the sun. Okay? But it's not a good mashal. Why? Because the ray of the sun, there is a separation between the sun and the ray of the sun. Because we live in space, right? The sun is not everywhere. So therefore, the idea that Hashem is everywhere is not truly revealed through this mashal. Okay? It reveals only one aspect of the mashal, of what happens to the sun, the ray of the sun, etc., etc. But it's lacking, meaning every single Gashmi Dika mashal will be lacking something because it cannot fully express the divinity. Okay, so therefore we need many mashalim to do what? Okay, v'zois muchrach lahavin prat echad she'eina muvan al yedei mashal zeh. Okay, now because the mashal is lacking, therefore you need to bring another mashal that will bring out another detail, right, of that thing. So therefore one must grasp other aspects of the concept that are not clarified through this one analogy. And therefore you need to bring a different mashal, okay, that will cover that aspect. So that's why we need many mashalim in rochav. Okay, now that might be a little bit confusing because you might be thinking, wait a second, didn't we say just in orech we also need to have many mashalim? It's true, but the purpose was different. The purpose was to get our brain working so we could get familiar with concepts like that. But here the purpose is very different. The purpose over here is to compare and contrast. Is actual analysis starts beginning with rochav, because we're going to first study each mashal separately, and then we're going to overlay them one on top of each other and see which aspect serves the nimshal. Okay? And based off that, draw our conclusion of what is that the nimshal is looking like. This aspect comes from the sun. This aspect comes from the ray. This aspect comes from the candle. This aspect comes from koach hapel benifal. This aspect is come from, I don't know, the way the neshama enlivens the body. Yeah, and slowly, we start creating a new concept, okay? And that new concept is going to be something totally different, something that we put together okay, through different mashalim, okay? ולזויס מוכרח להבין פרט אחד שאינו מובן על ידי משל זה, וצריך להבינו על ידי משל אחר. And thus they must be understood through a different analogy. ולכן יש הרבה משלים להשגה הייחוס דאין סוף בעולמות. And therefore, for this reason, there are many mashalim, okay, for understanding of the unity of Ein Sof within the worlds. ועל ידי כל המשלים בייחוד דווקא, and only through all these analogies together, okay, one can understand the quality of the unity within the world, but truly comprehend it, right? We could all understand it truly. Why? Because one mashal is not enough. We need more. We need the width. And this is why we need to expand our cognition and not only just become familiar with it. לכן כאשר אינו מעמיק עדיין להבין פרטי העניינים בעניין ייחוד אין סוף בעולמות. And therefore, once has not yet delved deeply into the detailed aspect of the unity of Ein Sof in the world, meaning we go back to orech now. We're not yet there. We're still in the orech level. Okay, רק כללות עניין הייחוד, but understand only the general concept of unity. אז אין ריבוי המשלים משמש אצלוי רק לקרב עין יורטה למוח הנ"ל. Then the multiplicity of analogies serve him only to bring the concept closer to his intellect, as explained above. וזה נקרא אורך דבינה, right? And that's orech and bina, meaning the general understanding is still orech of bina. But the detailed understanding, that's already rochav. So the details take place in the rochav. Okay, so that's very important. However, once he delves deeper, right, to understand the particular aspect of the divine unity, but as mevin al yedei kol mashal prat miyuchat be'inyan hayichud eloki, and therefore he comprehends through each analogy a distinct detail of the divine unity. You see, he's repeating himself, but he's repeating and carving a little bit deeper by comparing and contrasting orech into rochav. Then the concept of divine unity becomes revealed to him in several distinct matters. Okay, and not in a single uniform way. And this is the aspect of width of Binah. And from this, okay, specifically, right, from this very width, one arrives at the depth of Binah, as will be explained later. Okay, so as you could see, we are really hitting on something very, very important, as my daughter is really challenging this class. And anyhow, so this is the idea, right? The idea is that through orech, we are reaching the rochav, right? And we are going into the detailed analysis of many mashalim. Okay, let me just correct how mashalim is spelled here. Okay, mashalim, right? And how each mashal adds something to that the other doesn't. And the goal is to understand quality of his unity within the world. Right? The goal is not just to understand the general understanding of his unity. No, that could be understood from one mashal. And the only reason why we engage in many mashalim is that it becomes more settled and more clear in our brain and comes into our brain and familiarity. Here we already inviting a detailed iyun, okay, a detailed analysis of many mashalim to compare and contrast them. Okay, so the idea becomes very, very clear.
Okay. So Mila, where do you want to take it? I mean, it seems quite, the way you described it, I think it's very clear. For me, what's interesting as well is that he's taking something that we learned from chapter 1, which is, the orech and the rochav of Binah, and he's adding clarity to that. He's really doing a biur, and I find that quite helpful myself to have that going over it and a biur on it. And it seems like when we now go into the actual hisbonanos, into these 3 mashalim, that we're really going to go through this process. He's going to take us through this process of taking a mashal and opening it up and really trying to understand it from many different perspectives. Okay, so anybody wants to say anything about paragraph 5? Questions, insights, something? Shoshana, can you speak? You with us?
Hello? I just want to say thank you because it clarifies, it helps bring things together, and it gives me a feeling that, yes, one can go on to the next teaching.
Right. That's severe, right? Thanks. Severe.
Yes.
Yeah. It is clarifying. But so you see, we're seeing this very different style now in the way he teaches in chapter 3. Is every paragraph is just a little bit more clarifying. He's building very slowly, and to me it doesn't feel as difficult as paragraph 1. Okay, and Nechama is saying, now I'm wondering what the omek will bring, but also what you can see is that all the work that you did in chapter 1 really created the groundwork for him to be able to take us on a journey. I'm always feeling like chaval that we spent so much time trying to understand chapter 1, because in some sense, I mean, you definitely do need that foundation, because then you can't, but in a way now he's going to give us an example so that we can really experience that process of being in the orech of Binah and then being in the rochav of Binah, and then we'll find out, what that omek is also going to look like. Sarah Tova, are you still with us?
I am. Can you hear me?
Yeah. You want to comment?
No, just I remember distinctly when Shir Malka explained it to me like 1,000 years ago. The way the way it was said.
Which
that,
is
one mushal, you can't take the idea of the river or the sun or whatever. It's not going to quite get it. So you need a few to overlap. And then with a few different mashalim overlapping, then you can sort of get the concept. It's like nice memories of remembering her saying that to me.
right. So you really get to get a sense of what it means to be in that rochav experience, that you're looking at it from many different perspectives, and it really broadens your mind to do that. You're bringing up many examples and trying to understand something from different perspectives, not just from one perspective. It's almost like you go, yeah.
And I think it could be, again, but the Middle Rebbe doesn't specifically say this, so it's just my hypothesis. Because they're also bringing Chassidus down to the animal soul, my bodily experience of sun versus river, water, this and that is different. And in order for me to really, really, know Hashem and really internalize this main, Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad, the same here and there. Different parts of me need to hear it in a way that they can relate to it. But even in the Kabbalah, to me, it's interesting. This is, in a way, the ultimate meaning of the Ba'ifin and Miskabel. Like, your hands will get it because you put your hands in water. You know what water feels like. Your eyes will get it, or whatever, or your skin will get it because you know what it feels like to have the sun coming down on your skin. Different parts of me will get it in different ways. Wow,
I love that, Saratova. It's kind of, it's the word that comes up is somatic. That's
right.
That's the new buzzword in healing, is that you have to feel it in your body and that your body holds these memories. So what I hear you saying is that the different mashalim, which, as Mila pointed out, they have to be physical, they're going to not only appeal to different parts of our psyche, like to my mind, but my body, my whole body will respond to them because I know them in a different way. Like the experience of the sunlight is going to be different from the experience of a candle, not just in an intellectual way, but in a like a tangible physical experience. What's the word? There's a word for it. Yeah, basically it's going to resonate with not just your mind, but with your body. I think that's a lovely insight.
And our theory, our hypothesis before in our breakout room was that, sort of my little hypothesis, I don't want to blame it on anybody else, that really we're not so shaykh to this. In other words, naturally we would be heavenly way more, but Hashem kind of, for the purpose of fatsa and being the interface with the world, he gives us our natural state is not like, how do I experience it in my everyday life? I do not believe that that's our natural place where to go to. Hashem pushed us into it and constantly pushes us so that, oh yeah, I understand. If you explain it to me according to the recipe or according to my hands in the water, I get it. That's probably not our natural state. Probably our natural state, really, if Hashem didn't give us this hafatza to do, we would relate to it in a much more heavenly way. We would say, what? Hands, water, what are you talking about? It's not our turf. We're forced into that turf because the world is in that turf. That's my thought.
Okay, are you saying that this methodology is really bringing it down into the physical world, and that's where the transformation takes place?
Yeah, and we're Meiser Nefesh to feel like my physicality is my real reality, and I bet it's not. Right. I have no proof, but I bet it's not.
So in a way, if I'm hearing what, like just bouncing off what you're saying, he used this phrase, and personally, I don't remember exactly where it was in chapter 1, but it was somewhere there where he talks about that Torah needs to become like our everyday chatter. Like you listen into two women, chatting on the corner of Crown and, Kingston, whatever it is, like Mila said, where she lives. And what are you going to hear them say? They're going to be talking about Memale, or they're going to be talking about godliness. At the point where Torah is not like something separate, like, oh, now I'm going to a class, but where Torah becomes our what is the term that is used here? Petita deoraisa. Petitaya is an Aramaic word, I think, which means chatter. That your chatter is also like your everyday speech is just about godliness. And that's also where the transformation begins to take place, where, we're really seeing our lives through the lens of Torah all the time, rather than through the lens of Gashmiut. Like the Gashmiut and the Ruchniut are so become integrated. That's also part of the process of of Hitbonenut.
So
I'm
Nuria,
sorry if I could just say that was Shira Malka. If you don't mind my saying, I remember when she went on Shidduchim, so she would sit down the first minute and say, "So what's your relationship with God?" And one guy said, "Excuse me, that's a personal question." So she's like, "Okay, can you take me home?" Like this is a waste of time. If he's like, kind of like, I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about what you want to order. She's like, this ain't going to work, honey bunch, and like, let's go home, just take me home. And that idea. And I remember the first time I saw her putting all, like, I just knew her from Shari Yichud and exploring the depths of the truth of life. And I thought, that's the normal thing. And then one time I see her with the lipstick and the lip liner and all this makeup. And I was like, what are you doing? She said, oh, you didn't know I have a whole other side of myself? And she had like all these, like you can't even imagine. She was this makeup artist genius with 25 different types of how you put the lip liner on and all that. And she said, oh yeah, I have this whole other aspect of myself. And I didn't know that. I thought she was just Mrs. Shari. So sorry if that illustrates it.
But the point is that that's not a contradiction.
So Nuria, are you saying that, all right, women will talk about their children and what they're going to make for Shabbos, and that's all godliness. Are you saying that the language will change?
I'm not saying that the language will change.
We'll see no longer separation. Because right now for us, it's separate. There is a family, we see that dichotomy, right? There's a family and then there's God, there's this, there's God. But then we will not see the difference.
So when I'm talking about when I'm talking about the struggles that I have with my children or what I'm going to cook, I'll know that I'm talking about godliness and not just that. Is that?
You will not
I'm
have
trying to figure out what's the difference. Are we there yet?
I think we're meant to be getting closer. And I think it's possible now to be closer. Like the veil between the worlds as we get closer to Mashiach is thinning through the, thousands of years of work. So that, it starts with consciousness. It starts with the word for consciousness people like to use is das. It starts with how I'm thinking. I mean, really, if you take a minute and think about it, what's the difference between cooking for Shabbos and Shabbos? Shabbos is it's a godly concept. It's not so hard to make that yichud, to connect it. Now, when you're actually doing the cooking, it's very hard to think about, to do that. That's why even the Rebbe, I read it somewhere, that basically, why do we have to, before we start learning Torah, we have to say the blessing about learning Torah? Because when you're actually learning Torah, it's hard to think about God because you're thinking about the concepts. So you can't constantly be, I mean, obviously you're learning about God, but there are aspects of Torah where you have to just get involved in the details of it. We're still in that place, but as I say, they need, as we get closer, it becomes more integrated, and the more the hisbonenus we do, the more integrated it becomes.
I think that among women, there's always talks about parenting and different styles of parenting and attachment parenting and behavior, and I think that that's the biggest parallel we have to our relationship with Hashem, is raising children and parent-child relationships.
So that's one way of thinking about it. Like if you really want to understand raising children, what I hear you saying is that you have to understand our relationship to Hashem. Something Mila said last week when she was talking about her son being all agitated, and she just looked at him and thought, I don't know if I'm saying this exactly correctly, but it's how I understood it. And she just thought about him, you're a chelek Elokai mimal mamash, and just held that idea that she's looking at a neshama. And then somehow that actually calmed him down, and he was able to get out of his agitated state very quickly. So that's another example of with parenting. How do we look at our children? Do we look at them? I'm dealing with grandchildren at the moment, and they're so full of explosive emotions. You can really miss that they in that moment. So, even just thinking of the children as neshamas, looking them at as a neshama rather than the more external aspect. Maybe that, these are ways in that we're trying to find. These are almost like parallels. But eventually we won't need to even have those parallels. It'll be so natural to us that there won't be even a parallel. It'll just be the
I think the word that we are looking for is muchash. It says about godliness, said it's going to be muchash, right? That it's an interesting word in general. Like it talks about, that the godliness is going to be revealed in a way of muchash. It's interesting expressions. Not sure what the translation, but it's like from more than sensing. It's more. It's
Muchash.
muchash. Yeah.
What's the shorish of that word?
Chash.
Interesting. It's like, it's known that when you hold an infant, the oxytocin is released. And to me, that's like the closest experience of the neshama and of this is like when you hold a newborn baby, it comes straight from Hashem. You don't have to think about it.
It says palpable fact. I just looked it up. Muchash. It's factual. Davar muchash is a tangible thing. So the elokus is going to be not like this esoteric concept that we are just like thinking about it, right? It's going to be a very tangible experience. It's like you said, like I'm holding a baby, right? You're not doubting yourself when you're holding the baby. You don't even have a thought about the doubt. It's a reality, right? So the elokus, our interaction with the elokus is going to be as real as that, as a physical object. Okay, but in all its totalities, like every interaction we're going to have, we know that that's elokus. Like right now, it's more kind of on a muna level. It's above our head, and we sometimes forget about it, and then we have to come to a class to remind ourselves. But there, we don't. That's why we're not going to learn from people, because why we're learning from people? Because we don't know, or at least we think we don't know. That's why you could teach me, I could teach you, right? We think that we're adding to our knowledge. But in the times of Mashiach, it's going to be a different experience. It's just going to be a reality. So nobody's going to teach me about Hashem. Like, you're not going to teach me about, like, I don't know, like about the fact that I'm holding a baby, right? It's a fact. That's what muchash means. It's tangible. It's palpable. It's a sensory, experientially evident. These are the words of muchash.
And in a way, that goes back to what Sarah Tova was saying. I don't know if you were out of the room, Mila, but
now I needed some chilek kami mamash with my daughter. She was really like getting
So Sarah Tova was saying that these physical mashalim, they don't just, this is how I understood, they don't just appeal to your mind, but each different mashal appeals to a different part of your physical body, your physical experience. So the feeling of what the sun is on your body is different than the feeling of a candle in a dark room. So there's a psychic and physical experience of understanding something differently. I thought that was a beautiful idea.
Right. It definitely is. It's a somatic.
Yeah. So yeah. Just by the way, I don't know if this is off the subject, but talking about holding a baby, what I've been doing recently is actually, sometimes you just tend to take care of a baby, especially when they're younger, even kids sometimes. And I just started, we have a newborn grandchild, and just started to like look in his eyes, to look at the neshama, to see the neshama, to try and acknowledge the presence of the neshama in this tiny body, you know, like seeing the godliness that is there, seeing this, not just the physical baby that you need to feed and take care of and emotionally hold, but to see the child. And that it was quite an interesting experience to look. And I think sometimes we don't always do that with kids, with young kids. And then as the kids get older, everybody kind of loses that, you know, looking at the neshama. All right.
You see, when the neshama, when we look at the young child, baby specifically, until the age of 3, right? That's is more or less the age. Then they lose that sweetness, is because the intellect starts developing, and then it becomes his intellect versus my intellect, and we start teaching them. You know, when it's a baby, we're just gazing at them. You know, so it's more of that, you know, gaze relationship versus our chitzonius Binah.
Sometimes in the past, I've told parents when they're really having a difficult time with a child, to just take their minds back to when they held that baby and what that was like. And it can shift things.
That's true.
So Mila, you know, generally, if with these paragraphs being shorter, I don't have a problem that we shorten the class. I think
Sure,
that's
till 11:30, that's our time. So I think
if everybody's good with that. Like if there's nothing else that we need to say, this is more or less the structure that we can go forward with. And in a way, it's, you know, it can, I feel that it's easier to grasp like this. You know, we could say, okay, we'll do 2 paragraphs in one class. But then again, we'd be just stretching beyond our comfort zone. So if we continue in this way, we'll be climbing the ladder, you know, in small rungs, but we'll get to the top. Won't seem like as much of a stretch. Anybody can agree with that, and then we can close down the class.
Yeah, that's good. Maybe we were more efficient in daylight saving time. I mean, in standard time.
بعد أني بعد شعب خاتي مسبيك.
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Hashem. Have a good week.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
Oh, Mila, you want to stay on?